I realized that you did see Resident Evil Death Island, and that's the more like recent Resident Evil release. Since we've talked, RE4 remake has come and gone. We'll talk about that, but first I wanted to discuss Death Island because I reviewed it. I did a podcast kind of talking about it point by point. I did a review on it that was kind of more bite-sized, no spoilers. But I didn't think it was something that, I think a lot of people were going to be split on. But to be honest with you, I'm getting a lot of comments, and I'm getting a lot of positive. But I'm also getting some that are like fair, constructive criticism. There's the haters that are like, blah, 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 this sucks because whatever. But like, there's people that are actually leaving like, comments as to why. And I kind of wanted to see, how you felt about the movie, because you kind of hinted in the text, you're like, all right, we might feel a little bit different for this one, but that's what I like. I like these conversations. So how did you, I guess, go into Death Island? Like maybe what you thought it was going to be to what it ended up being for you towards the end for Death Island?
Well, I'll start off by saying I'm not one of those people that hate it and want to shit on it. I don't feel that way about anything that Resident Evil has really put out.
Sure.
But this one, I had low expectations going in, only because just all the CGI related content that has been put out by Capcom, Resident Evil related, just has not been that great in my opinion. With the exception of the 4D Executor. I don't see that really getting mentioned a lot when people mention the CGI films. That 4D Executor, which I believe was the first one.
Yeah.
But that's because it takes place in Raccoon City. And it is a bit of like an amalgamation of what would happen if we had a creature like the Thing put into Resident Evil, which I don't think people talk about enough. But the first one, that, remember the big event behind Degeneration? So Leon was in it, and I was like, okay, now we're taking a stab at animated movies. Let's watch that. And that one didn't really hit the mark for me. And then everyone after that, especially that recent Netflix series,
Infinite Darkness.
Infinite Darkness. The quality just, it's more so the writing just doesn't feel like it's too fleshed out. So when I went into this one, I kind of had the same level of expectations. Like, well, I'm not going to expect to get my mind blown or find anything that's just like, wow, this changes my opinion of the CGI films. It kind of just reinforced it. And it's just, I look at it as, you know what, it's still entertainment. I understand when people look at it and they love seeing all the characters grouped into one. I can comprehend that there's people that have a lot more invested into these characters than I do. And yeah, there's, who am I to deny them that joy of seeing all of them taking that Avengers pose there. But for me, it's just, it was too, I try not to overanalyze the plot, but something just like the dialogue, I guess, is the one thing that I would start off with as being like not too well put together. And it's one of those things why I wonder, is this one of those situations where things got lost in translation? Kind of like how the first game's dialogue was a bit wonky.
Right.
Because I wonder if they wrote the screenplay and the dialogue in Japanese, and then this is the English translation to its best degree. Because I'm well aware that when it comes to languages, especially in Chinese and Japanese as well, that they have so many more different phrases and uses that would describe one word in English.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. It feels like there's a bit of like translation issue there, and they just try to make up those blank spots on their own. But when you have like some of the plot just didn't really fit right with me. Like for one thing, the main villain, Dylan. Sorry if I'm going to his Dylan. Yeah, the spoiler. I hope I'm not going any spoiler territory for
That's
everyone.
all right.
But,
Well, if you haven't seen the film at this point, guys, just pause it and come back to this conversation, because at this point, I already did the spoiler podcast, so all bets are off. So we'll talk about it now. Go ahead.
Yeah. So when Dylan's kind of just roasting everyone, and I think kind of find that funny.
Yeah, that was probably funny. And he just came at Chris really hard. He's like, Chris, you've lost men on every mission. It's like, it's even true in Village, right? So
very true.
Yeah.
And it's just when he's kind of calling everyone out, like really on the nose. Do you know what it's like? What it feels like to have to kill your best friend after watching him turn? And not one person spoke up about that. I figured, your pain, everyone else here is probably the closest that they've come to sharing the same pain as you. Like, all right, well, dude, Leon, his first day at work, had to kill Marvin. Granted, you might not have played that scenario if that's the way you want to play it. Okay, Resident Evil 6, Leon shot the fucking president in the face.
Yes. Yes.
He's had to deal with that on more than one occasion, and not one person spoke up about
They
that.
didn't mention Raccoon City because he talks about
Yeah.
his friend, but he didn't even say, oh, in Raccoon City, because then they could have been like, well, we went through the
Yeah.
whole escape. Like, nobody said anything. And I understand that, most of them were infected in the cell, but, like, they had enough to say, make jokes like Leon's like, it's a living and all these, it's
Yeah.
you would think they would have at least, or even Jill, who was uninfected at that conversation, would have been like, hey, I went through this, and this, and, like, I had to witness, me almost killing my friends because of Wesker's control and, like, all this stuff. There was not, like, I agree there definitely was, like, Dylan himself just seemed very cookie cutter, and some of the dialogue did seem very, like, just very strange with the delivery. It's very, it does seem that way. And I watched it a third time because of the 4K came in. And yeah, it's like I started to notice, like, a little things too, like the third time through. I'm like, okay, some of this stuff, I can see some people not putting this over as much. And it's not, like you said, it's not coming from a place of hate. It's just because I agree with Infinite Darkness, especially. It's a show, it's a show, which is fine, but you didn't really write it like a show. You wrote it like an hour and a half CGI film that was cut up into episodes.
I actually have something to say on behalf of that too, because
Sure.
the other thing that kind of just still I couldn't get out of my head is just the complete, like, flip flop that Capcom seems to be doing with the CGI material now, and with the line of voice actors they have available. We have Infinite Darkness that has Nick Apostolides as
Yep.
Leon. So I started to wonder, that's got to be, I don't know the specifics of it, but that to me seems like there's some kind of contractual opposition there. Because the initial thought I had was, well, what if the people who played Chris and Leon in the movie, I forget their names.
Matthew Mercer and Kevin Dorman, I believe, are the
Yeah.
two. So Matthew Mercer played Leon, and then Kevin Dorman was Chris.
I would suspect that they have some kind of contract written out that guarantees them X amount of CGI movies from Capcom. And because they had Infinite Darkness rated in the pipe to go and riding on the tail end of, the release of Resident Evil 2 Remake and then Resident Evil 4 Remake coming out, so Nick is a very hot commodity right now. Because the contract still stipulated that Matthew Mercer is Leon in the films, they probably had Infinite Darkness written out as a movie, and at the last minute diced it up into episodes so they could get around that loophole. So
Sure.
that way,
That's actually a
they could
good
keep
point.
Nick.
I didn't even think about that way.
And then them keeping Stephanie Panicello on as Claire. I think a while ago they wrote out Allison Court, and I think that was a lot of debate around that because it had to do something like they weren't hired on specific
Yeah,
Actors Guild
they
or
went
something?
non-union basically.
Yeah.
And I think I'm looking it up here. That's what I'm looking at. So Matthew Mercer started playing Leon in RE6.
Right.
So they basically went. So basically, he's been playing the older Leon, I guess, what you would consider. But you're right. Like, it's interesting because they kind of switch all the time, and it's back and forth. And the Nick Apostolides thing, like, it didn't really make sense with him in Infinite Darkness. But now that you mention that, it makes it seem like, yeah, like the films are kind of one thing, and then they just made Infinite Darkness what it was, and it very much seemed like it was an afterthought in many ways, because I
Yeah.
already remember most of these CGI films over what happened in Infinite Darkness. Like, I might have remembered when I talked about it when it came out, but, like, at least the other ones had little, like, things that I do remember from, like, little key things that I thought were cool. Couldn't even tell you one in Infinite Darkness, and it was left on such a weird cliffhanger. Like, Claire and Leon having that disagreement.
Yeah. I mean, I could tell you a couple of things that stood out for me as memorable moments in the show that I don't think they intended it to be. We were watching it with my fiance, and the scene where it shows them, like, the early scenes of them in the desert battle sequences, and there's a part where, like, one of the soldiers is kind of moving, crouching through cover, and all of a sudden it looks like you get, like, crazy spider legs. I don't know. It looked like some kind of issue with the animation. It just looked fucking weird. And then one thing that, like, I just don't understand, in the scene with the zombies, they start to infest the White House. That one guy just shoots a zombie, it jumps on top of him, and he just launches that sucker up into the air and looks over, and it's just hanging on top of a fucking chandelier. Like, what? How did we get to that point? What happened here?
Yeah, where he
Is
just
this?
threw a grown ass man up on a chandelier, like, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
What the hell is that? But like, how did you feel about Jill's return? Because that's kind of like the biggest thing that most fans were looking forward to. Did you feel like they did Jill Valentine justice with how long she's been away, not including RE3 remake, obviously?
yeah. I mean, I had two perspectives on that. One of them, I tried to make sure I watched it as just this is Jill being brought back into the storyline, and it's great that we get to see her and Chris together. Like, it feels surreal when I think about it. Like, wow, yeah, the last time we saw them together was the fifth game, which was 2009.
Yes.
So, like, the interaction between them, and clearly she's going through some PTSD. I just think that, again, it's one of those things where I would have liked to see that played out a little bit more because it doesn't look like it affected her much. Like, being under control, having to contend with, you know, attacking her friends, being under Wesker's control. Much like how we were treated to, like, the one dream sequence in Resident Evil 3 Remake, that it seems like it's mentioned, one and done, and then she's just back to just being, ass kicking left and right. I would like to see some. I don't think there was enough moments of vulnerability that were shown to kind of give that
Sure.
presentation. But between her and Chris, again, it felt service level. There's some cool quips between the two of them, but it didn't feel like it got that deep. Like, I would like to know, like, outside of the mission perspective, like, how are you living with yourself? It seems like they're always just focused on the mission objective. And that might just be cut to runtime. Like, we don't really have time to get into what's life like been for you outside of missions because we got to get the story rolling.
Yeah, it's like less than 90 minutes, not even including credits, you know what I mean? So they try
Yeah.
to get in and get out. But yeah, I honestly do agree with you, man, because I did enjoy Jill and I liked what we got, and she's my favorite Ari character or just video game character in general. And I kind of wish they went a little. I'm happy with what we got. I wasn't upset, and I wasn't upset about Nikki's performance either because I thought she did a really good job, Nicole
Yeah,
Tompkins.
yeah.
But I just wish that they also made her look different. And I understand people are saying, "Oh, well, Capcom wants her to look a certain way," and blah blah blah. But listen, like, you're not going to look like you're in your 20s, and everyone else looks like older. Some people say that Claire looks like this, Chris looks like this, but at the same time, like, I don't think Jill should look like 1998 Jill. She should look a
Yeah.
little bit different. At least give her a different fucking outfit.
Seriously, that I don't understand that. Like,
At
it's
least give her a different outfit. Like, I understand she goes to the island and she has like a coat on for like that split second. But
yeah,
that thing comes right off once shit starts hitting the fan immediately when
yeah.
they go to Alcatraz. And I'm just like, you guys, like, keep her in blue. That's her color, but like, change it. You know what I mean?
No,
Switch
put
it
some
up.
sleeves. Like, some sleeves would be fine. Just
Something,
different.
man. And the thing is like, it's not really established because if it's in 2015 and then RE5 is in '09, so is this like her first year back? Like, it doesn't say like when she started. Like, I don't know if her going into that house was like her first, like, I'm going in, like, mission back on the BSAA. There was no real mention of that other than her, saying, well, this is like, it's good to have you back, like, that kind of thing, like, you're back. But, like, when did you start? Like you said, there's a little things that, like, as fans, we're thinking of, and some fans will just see it and be like, oh, no, it's good, that's fine. But then we're just like, yeah, but there's, like, that little bit left that I feel like they should have talked about. The one thing I did like in their conversation at the shooting range was, Chris talking about Pierce, because we didn't really get to see his aftermath of that. And so RE6 taking place in 2012 and then in 2013 as well. This is only 2 to 3 years after that, so it would still be affecting him. But even then, he kind of has like it's like emotional for a moment, and then we don't really get to see anything beyond that because it's all about the mission. But I just wish that this is why I think they should try to bring them back or bring Jill back in the main games, because they can really start to explain things at a game's length pace and not be like, all right, this has to be this animated film that's about 90 minutes less, a little bit less than 90 minutes give or take. And it's just like, it's just Jill being my favorite character. I'm like, fuck, like we're pretty close to seeing like the whole emotional side, but it only got emotional for like a second, and then it was right back to business. So I kind of wish they, like, I understand she was trying to play it off tough, but It's like I kind of wish we got a little bit more. I wasn't upset or dissatisfied, and I liked the action scenes. I thought the CG was good. I thought the voice acting was good for what we got. But I also just think like, man, like I kind of wish it was. I kind of wish the show Infinite Darkness kind of took an approach where they wrote it like a show, they brought the budget in, and they were able to explain these things a little by little. Like, have 3 episodes of, like, just Jill's, like, what Jill has been going through, or her whole thing, like, little things like that, because I doubt they're going to go back and do a season 2. But I would have liked them to do more than just, like, all right, we're going to tell Claire's story again, Leon's story. It's like, I'm happy they did this now, than just waiting for another game to come out, and then you have to explain like a lot of what happened. But I still feel like there has to be more explaining to do if she were to even come back in like an RE9, right? Just to bring her back to back to form, and also to bring some original characters back. You can pepper in new characters, but like I think a lot of fans are kind of looking for that next like game that brings back a lot of characters. It doesn't have to be a whole reunion like this movie was, but just have something that is not what the Winters story kind of gave us. And for me, that wasn't really what I felt like was Resident Evil.